Hey guys, welcome back to another flashlight review. Today we're going to be looking at the Armytek C1 Pro, and this is my third Armytek flashlight. I have to say this is one of my favorite brands. They just go all out when it comes to attention to detail. They've got this solid design, great construction, high quality construction in their lights. There's just a few things that I think that they do differently, and a few unique features, especially in this light, that really sets them apart. So make sure you hang around if you want to find out more. This one comes with a 10-year warranty, and I think a lot of them do come with the 10-year warranties. Anyway, at least 7-year warranty. It's also rated at 10 meters drop and water resistant, which is pretty impressive, especially because you don't have any of these charging ports on there. One of the first things I noticed taking it out of the package is that it has this really nice premium feel. I don't know how really to describe it, but it's almost like I'm holding a precision tool rather than a EDC flashlight. And Armytek market this as a 3-in-1 EDC light, bike and sports light, so you can actually attach it onto your bike if you've got a mount. It's also a keychain light as well. You can attach a little ring there on the back. So let me show you what's included. This here is the box, and it's got a lot of stuff going on here, as you can see. But you've got all the information: 10-year warranty, no hassles warranty, 1,000 lumens. So you've got all the details here. You can actually pause the video if you want to read any of these particular sections. There's also a section here that tells you the run times. So this is everything that you pretty much get in the box. And Armytek also include one of these batteries here. It's an 18350 cell, 900 milliamp hours cell. It's just unprotected. You can use any other 18350 cell in here, as well as a CR123 cell. So you also get, obviously, you get the light itself, but you get this cable here. It's a magnetic charging cable. So basically, it just attaches onto the back of the light like that when it's screwed on, obviously, to charge the battery inside. You've also got a nice lanyard here, okay, with a clip on the end. You've got a couple of these nice O-rings, replacement O-rings, and of course you get the instruction manual too. Alright, just over here, I thought I'd show you a little lineup of some of my 18350 flashlights. So this one's a 16340 flashlight here on the right, but it's sort of close. I thought I'd include it. Some of you would have seen this one, the Doberman Night XO. Okay, it's really quite different from the Prime C1 Pro. It's still got a magnet at the end, but the design is very different, and the LED faces forward rather than on top. Okay, you've got the Warrior Nano, Olight Warrior Nano. I think this is probably the closest comparison here, though. I'd say the Warrior Nano is almost like a tactical flashlight because you've got a switch on the back. Okay, C1 Pro is fairly short. It's a little bit shorter than the Nano. Here is my Spear's M4, and this is an 18350 flashlight, but it's got quite a large head here to just maximize that throw. Okay, and of course here I've got, it's an old flashlight. It's an X-Tar WK21, I think. Takes a 16340 cell. Here's a little close-up of the Prime C1 Pro. And one thing I noticed with Armytek is that they use a special kind of anodizing that I've never seen on other flashlights before. It's very durable, chalky matte black, and it has some serious grip. I think that's the best part of it. But the durability, I think, is really an important thing to mention as well. I have another Armytek flashlight, the Doberman Pro, with the same finish, the same anodizing, and I remember carrying it around in my bag and sort of rattling around with a few other bits and pieces, other flashlights and some keys, and it was the only one that didn't get dinged up or scratched up. And one thing I noticed is even with wet hands, if you wet the flashlight, the grip is still pretty good. So yeah, really happy. I think this is probably my favorite anodizing of all the flashlights that I own. Looking at the machining as well, you can see there's no imperfections whatsoever, no rough spots, machined very well. And there's no knurling on the battery tube. As you can see, it's all pretty smooth, but the head has a bunch of cutouts there, and you can see the center cutout is used as the attachment point for the steel clip. It doesn't come attached when you first get the light. You have to put it on yourself, and it's It's a clip that I really like. It's rigid, okay? So you do have to give it a bit of pull to come out, which I think is important. Okay, you get some of those cheaper clips that just bend and fall off. They even come off the actual tube itself, these cheaper ones, but this is a really nice one, good quality. And it's also deep carry, which I was pretty happy about because, as you guys know, I really like these deep carry flashlights. And yeah, like I said, very rigid, well-designed clip. And it's something you can also clip it onto your hat, okay, as a makeshift headlamp, onto your bag strap. You can see where the clip goes all the way in. There's a decent amount of space here, and I've had an issue on some flashlight with some clips where there's just not enough space in that clip, so it doesn't kind of stops around here. Okay, it won't go any further. So I kind of touched on this before, but this is the bottom of the flashlight where you attach the charger. So basically just attaches like that very easily. And let's go across to the side. You can see here there's a big yellow button. You really can't miss that. And one of the things that bugs me with these smaller flashlights is sometimes they just put a tiny little button on there. I've seen them on keychain lights as well. It just bugs me because you're trying to find the button. It's difficult, and you're definitely going to miss this one out. It sticks out a little bit as well, as you can see. Okay, so it's not a recessed button, so it makes it very easy to find. But the good thing, thankfully, is that it actually requires a decent amount of force to activate it. It's not like I'm having to, squeeze the life out of it, but you definitely have to give it a very confident press to turn on. And I think that's important for me because I'm normally not a fan of carrying around these side switch lights in my pocket because they turn on accidentally all the time, especially when I've this other light here with this Spiro's M4. I found that it does turn on in my pocket if I'm not careful because the button's very soft. So you don't have that issue. Makes me feel more confident carrying it around in my pocket, especially with this deep carry clip. And the light also takes 16340 or CR123 primaries, which I think is a good bonus. If you run out of juice and you've got a primary cell in there, you can pick them up from the shops very easily. The bezel, okay, looking down the top, you can see it's made of stainless steel, which is a really nice addition. Kind of adds a bit of extra functionality if you need to whack something with it. I don't know, break a window or something like that. It's gonna do a lot better than a bit of aluminium there. TIR lens, which keeps the length of the flashlight down. And you've also got in here, I had to look it up. It didn't say it in the manual, but in the spec sheet, it's the Samsung LH351D LED. This is not the high CRI version. It's 5000K. One thing I was really happy with is that Armytek have actually stuck on a proper tempered glass lens on the front of that TIR lens, and it's anti-reflective as well, which I think is absolutely perfect because you can scratch up that TIR lens very easily over time. A lot of companies don't put anything on the front. But yeah, I even checked it. I used a nail and tried to scratch it. It's definitely glass. All right, so I want to talk a bit about the UI, and this is going to take me a little bit of time to go through, and I think this is going to be actually more useful for people who have purchased a light and are maybe struggling to figure out how it works because the manual is quite confusing in my opinion. Let's talk about switching UIs first. There's two UIs. There's the general UI and the advanced UI that I mentioned before. Now, in order to switch UIs, you basically unscrew the tail cap 1/4, press down on the button, screw it back in while holding the button down, and the light, as you can see, will turn on. And that's when you know you've switched modes, okay? And basically just repeat in order to switch from those two UIs. So we'll go through the general UI first. Now in the off state, basically you just click it once, press once to go into the last mode. So it's basically just a memory mode. So if you're in this mode, okay, turn it off, turn it on, it actually remembers it. Now from off, if you press and hold, it cycles through 2 low modes and 3 higher modes. So one, and then it just basically cycles through the 3 higher modes. But initially when you press and hold to turn on, it actually goes to this very low mode, the second very low mode. And then you've got these 3 kind of high modes there, okay? And then it just cycles those 3 high modes. So in order to get to those 2 kind of moonlight modes, you do have to hold down while the light is switched off. Okay, so while the flashlight is on, if you want to switch it off, just basically press the button once, that turns it off. Now, when the light is on, basically it will cycle through all the different modes, the 3 main modes. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, but say you start off on, this lowest mode, that firefly mode, turn that light on, it remembers firefly mode. Because it's already on, it will cycle through those 2 lower modes, and then it will go to those 3 higher modes and just cycle those 3 higher modes essentially. Okay, now if you want to access turbo in any mode, basically the light has to be on and you just double press. Yeah, basically you can cycle between turbo and the last remembered mode. So for example, if I have it on like moonlight mode, okay, can double click to go to turbo, double click again to go back to the firefly. I keep calling it moonlight, but firefly mode, basically the same thing. All right, so let's go through the advanced UI mode. So while the flashlight is off, basically just press and hold down and the light will cycle through 7 modes. So it's basically 3 firefly modes, 3 main modes, and 1 turbo mode. Okay, so now what do you do if you actually want to select a particular mode? Okay, so you should stop on that mode, okay? But what you do is if you want it to say go to just these firefly modes, you stop on the firefly modes. It's very difficult to sort of explain this, but while you sort of think of it as when the light is off, this is like your kind of mode group selection, okay? So you've essentially got these 3 here, these 3 here, and then you've got a turbo mode, okay? So if you want a really low output, say this mode, these 3, this one and the 2 above, you stop there. And as you take your finger off and you press again, it only will cycle through those 3 modes, as you can see. Let's try again. So go to off and let's go to the main modes. Okay, bit more power. Now I've lifted the finger off, press again, and it just goes through those modes, as you can see. And the same thing goes is, if you want to get into the turbo mode, so just go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now I'm in the turbo mode. And I can cycle between a low, kind of lower turbo, 350 lumens, and 1000 lumen turbo mode. Okay, so really think of that function as when the light is off and you're pressing down that button, you're selecting a group of modes. Okay, you're either selecting the lowest 3 modes, firefly, you're selecting the main modes in the center, or you're selecting the turbo mode right at the end. Okay, like I just did there. So there's a few other functions that also work in the on/off state, so with the lights on or off. And the first one here is double click, and the double click allows you to access the 3 main modes just above the firefly modes. Okay, now if you double click, what it does is that it goes back to those 3 initial firefly modes. So you double click and you cycle between the main mode groupings. I think that more like a low, medium to high, and double click to go back to the firefly lowest 3 modes. So it's a nice little way of, I guess, separating out those modes so you don't have to be, cycling through all 6 modes all the time. In order to access turbo, so that's either with the light on or off, okay, it's just 3 clicks. Okay, and remember there's 2 turbo modes, 350 lumens and 1000 lumens. I tend to just leave mine on the 1000 lumens, and this is also very important to remember when you're in the advanced mode. Okay, whatever turbo mode you leave it on, either the 350 lumen mode or the 1000 lumen mode, this will carry over into the simple or the general UI mode. So I was trying to figure this out when I first got this light. I thought that turbo mode was just not that as bright as I'd expect. It really looked like 1000 lumens, and that was because in the advanced UI it was set to the lower 350 lumen mode. So once I pumped that up to 1000, switch the UI back to the general mode. Another function that you can access as well is strobe mode. There's 3 different strobe modes, so 4 clicks. And there is 1,000 lumens at 10 Hertz, 1,000 lumens at 1 Hertz, and 100 lumens at 1 Hertz. So you basically just hold down that button. So it's 1,000 lumen at 1 Hertz. I'm guessing 100 lumen at 1 Hertz here. And then you got this one with 1,000 lumens at 10 Hertz. So that's going to consume the most amount of battery, okay? And that's going to consume the least amount of battery, but it's still pretty bright, 100 lumens. You're going to be able to get some attention there. Also worthy to note that even if you leave it on the turbo mode or the strobe mode, the light will remember. Okay, so if I'm on that kind of beacon mode, I guess, strobe/beacon, it remembers that. Last little thing I want to show you is how to configure the indicator light. So there's actually a light here on the button that will flash and indicates what the battery level is. As it flashes faster, it just means that the battery is draining faster. That there is a little document, and you actually have to find this. I had to search quite far onto the Armytek website, and for some reason they didn't include it in the manual that came with this actual flashlight. Maybe it was just too much, but there is a kind of code to it, I guess. I think 1 flash per 4 seconds. The battery is above a certain point, and as it flashes fast, there's another 0.25 and then 10%. So there's basically 3 states that you can configure it to. So always on, you can always have it flashing, just the indicator on. You can have it on when in the main mode, so not the Firefly modes, but the main modes, or you can have it off, just completely off like I have here. So basically unscrew the tail cap 1/4, hold down the button, tighten and unscrew it to 1/4 again. Okay, and that should then, when you screw it back, should activate that light. Let me just turn off the light so you can see. Okay, and just trying to figure out what mode this one is in. Okay, so this is like the always on mode. So it's just gonna basically flash, and apparently also if it starts overheating, if it gets really hot, it will flash quite rapidly as well. So it does indicate heat, and when you press the button, can you see it also activates that light very slightly? And it might be good because, you know, this little indicator as well, you know, if you maybe leaving it around at night and you're trying to find the flashlight, maybe you're just trying to use it as a very dim kind of beacon or something like that to mark your campsite, or, you know, what have you. I think this is like a pretty cool little feature. Okay, and you basically just unscrew, do the same technique like I mentioned before in order to cycle to only on when it's on the 3 main modes, and just completely off. Alrighty, so I ran a bunch of ceiling bounce tests, see how the light performs, how the driver performs, and you can see here I've got it on the highest turbo mode 2, so 1000 lumens, and really impressive. You almost get 4 minutes of runtime on that turbo 2 mode, which is, I think it's pretty impressive for a little flashlight like this, pumping out 1000 lumens. You can't do better than that. And you can see the step down, you know, it's pretty steep, but it goes just above the 30% mark, and it holds that for the rest of the test. I ran that test for roughly 16 minutes. Charged the light up again, and I ran a second ceiling bounce test on the turbo mode 1, so 350 lumens, and you can see here light starts out at 100%, drops very slightly, maybe to not even 95%, 97%. Or something like that, and just around the 90-minute mark, just before the 90-minute mark, you can see that light steps down quite significantly to about 10% output, and I ended the test close to about the 100-minute mark. So really impressive. I mean, that's great performance for a higher mode, and 350 lumens, that's nothing to laugh at as well. And it's good that it doesn't just drop off completely as well. I stopped the test earlier, but you know, you've got a usable kind of moonlight mode at the end there. Pretty good regulation in this light. There's no dips really, if you look at the curve and consistent output throughout the entire test. The beam pattern for the Prime C1 Pro is very practical, produces a really large hot spot and decent amounts of spill as well. I'm surprised how far this thing could throw. In the test, I got nearly 150 meters of throw, and lots of decent spill as well. But as you know, with these TIR flashlights, you're going to need to pop it up to at least some of the main modes to be able to see some decent amounts of spill, unless you're in a pretty dark sort of area. Ran a bunch of tests on my Opal Lightmaster Pro, and you can see here the CCT pretty much sits around 5,000 K. I mean, if you average them all out, but on the lower modes, the lower Firefly modes, you can see they kind of are a bit more warm, and you will notice that as you turn the flashlight on those lower modes. So I thought it was pretty warm initially, but when you go up to, at least the main mode, just becomes a very bright white tint. And like I was saying before, really impressed with that Turbo 2 mode. Look at that, 146 meters of throw for such a little flashlight like this. I mean, that's very impressive. Okay, so some considerations I wanted to go through with this light. And the first one is the UI. And this is something you probably get the idea by now, just seeing how long that took for me to explain the advanced UI. Okay, it's pretty complicated when you're in that advanced UI mode. It took me a while to learn, and the manual wasn't very helpful at all. It just confused me, but it took me a while, and I finally figured it out. But it does allow you to get more control once you understand that UI, and you can use all those little shortcuts. It actually saves time, and if I was only using maybe 1 or 2 flashlights, I'd remember that UI pretty easily. But I've got so many of them, it's something like this I'm definitely going to forget if I'm keeping in that advanced UI. But the good news is that the general UI mode is very simple. So very intuitive. The manual just makes everything a little more complicated than it actually is. The second consideration is the clip. So notice that the clip touches the tail cap. It sort of rubs on the tail cap a little bit. It's not a big deal, just a bit annoying. And I just think a shorter clip would have been better if they just made the clip come up to around here. I don't really open and close it very much anyway, especially because I'm charging it wirelessly or with the magnetic charger on the side. But when you're changing UIs, or if you're fiddling around with the different indicator modes on there, it does touch that clip. Thankfully, though, it doesn't damage the finish on the flashlight. The third consideration is, of course, this is an 18350 cell flashlight, and you'll know what you're getting into if you're purchasing a smaller EDC like this. You're not going to be expecting hours and hours of runtime on turbo. And it's actually good that, 350 lumens for over 1.5 hours is really impressive for such a little flashlight. Of course, the Prime C1 Pro also takes proprietary charging. Okay, so that's something that you're gonna need to have with you when you're on a trip, plugged into your car, or if you've got an external charger, you can charge. I use an X-Tar VC8 to charge a lot of my batteries anyway, so it's not an issue for me. Okay, but it does make it very, very easy to charge. Okay, the convenience, but at the same time, yes, it's proprietary. Good news is that the light accepts non-proprietary cells and CR123 primaries as well. I do find that lights without onboard charging, these USB ports on there, are just more durable, less susceptible to water damage, to blunt force damage, just another point of weakness on the body of the light. I do think an extension tube would have been great if Armytek included an extension tube so we could run this thing off 18650s as well. But they do have another model. I think it's called the Prime C2, which is longer, the 18650 version of this light. Overall, the Armytek Prime C1 Pro is one serious EDC flashlight. The amount of thought and attention to detail that went into this little thing just blows my mind. It's certainly over-engineered, and I don't think I'll ever get to use that advanced UI, but it's good to know that it's there if I need it. And for some of you, you might actually need it or may prefer it. So I think this would be perfect. This light would be perfect if you're looking for a great performing EDC that's going to last you many years to come and has some excellent performance as well. So if you're interested, check the link below in the description. You'll be able to get a discount from my code there. And if you have questions about the light, just let me know in the video description. I'll get back to you. If you like the video, you found it helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend, or just like the video. It just really helps to get it out to more people, shares my content. And yeah, if you want to see more videos and keep up to date with the latest flashlight reviews and news, then make sure you subscribe. All right, so I've got the Armytek Prime C1 Pro, and I'm going to go through all the steps on the simple mode. Okay. So you can just see, it's really those main modes that you can use here for the purposes of this beam shot test, because I'm on a golf course. That's the turbo mode at 1000 lumens. And you can see the beam profile is very nice. You've got this big hot spot in the center. And lots of spill, tons of spill. It's not hitting the trees out the back, but it is hitting this closer one over here to the right. Okay. The great thing is that only 1000 lumen mode, you've got basically 4 minutes before it starts stepping down, which is very impressive. I'll show you the 2 different turbo modes as well. So that's the 1000 lumen turbo mode, okay, 350 lumen turbo mode. The 350 lumens, as seeing the runtime test, lasted me 1.5 hours. This is more than enough light to get you through this path here. More than enough light. I mean, I'd actually put it on one of the main modes, but I mean, that's the turbo mode, turbo 2 mode, 1000 lumens, and very impressive. But you can't really see the lower modes. You know, I'm actually stepping through them at the moment, but the main few at the start, the 3 or first 4 modes, aren't even visible on camera. Okay. And I'll just go for a walk and show you what this looks like. This is turbo 2. Okay, I've got the Prime C1 Pro, and that's on the turbo mode. I'll cycle through the 2 turbo modes there. Okay, the lower modes are very difficult to see, but we can, you know, these are the 3 main modes, 2, 3. Still pretty good, that 3rd main mode. Quite see to the end of the path. You need that turbo to see. Turbo 2, by the way, this is 1000 lumens. This is the 350 lumens. Okay, just cycling between 350 and 1000 lumens. Even that 350 mode is pretty good. But, you know, that's the high, or the third main mode. Turbo 1, Turbo 2. Back to that third main mode. Turbo 2, Turbo 1. Let's have a walk. I'll just show you what it looks like. Beam pattern.